Welcome to the Channel Surfers. I'm John McCabe, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Jeff Lennon. How you doing today, Jeff?
John, I'm doing fantastic. It's that time of year, between surfing and baseball, which I don't surf, so definitely excited.
Yeah, I hear you. And spring has sprung, and the weather's getting great. So Jeff, I'm gonna let you do the introduction for our guest today because it's something I think we're both very interested in, and I think this is going to be a great conversation. So go ahead and introduce our guest today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, I appreciate that. So what's interesting? Well, first of all, right, the whole premise of this show, just to kind of set the table, right? It's we want to kind of delve through the whole world of channel partnerships, the evolving ecosystems, the nuances, and really what's kind of happening, what's reshaping the whole channel partner ecosystem.
Right.
So with that, I'm really thrilled to introduce an old friend, a very seasoned old friend that we've known each other. God, we were joking about it before we jumped on here, probably 17, 18 years now.
Yeah.
Anyway, Craig brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in the channel. We met when I was actually at I was actually employee number 16 at a startup, and we met. And what I want to do is I'll kind of, without further ado, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, kind of talk about where you've been, what you're doing, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I sometimes feel like I'm one of the longest serving individuals in partnerships and alliances because I actually started my career in technology in that line of business for Oracle. I came out of an advertising background. I got the job at Oracle and immediately took on managing the entire ISV community at Oracle Canada in the sub, which was probably about 170 partners or so.
Wow.
And then, you had a big machine behind you. And then my career evolved, of course, like everybody's in tech. I went from Oracle to a company called Research in Motion, better known as BlackBerry.
Yep.
Again, stayed in the partner business and built and helped launch the BlackBerry ISV program. And for everybody who's listening, this is pre any type of fancy smartphone that you can think of today. This is a monochrome screen. It was still doing email.
It was state of the art, Craig. It
was state of the art at the time. State of the art at the time, for sure.
I watched the movie on that. I saw what the prototype looked like.
Yeah. The prototype was available. You could see it. It was kept in Mike Lazaridis' office. You could.
Oh, wow.
You could go see it made out of wood if you wanted to. But my theme has always been working in the channel and working with partners, whether it's ISVs or resellers, and that's kind of how we got to know each other. Jeff, was when I was at AdLib, and we were working heavily in the life sciences sector, and we had a lot of the same partners, and managed to get some good business done and have some fun in that as well. And my career kind of continued, even though my industry changed. I stayed, in the partnership realm, even when I had other responsibilities, whether it was some direct sales or some other management. But when I had went and joined my I'll get to kind of the chase here. When I eventually joined what they were dubbing a unicorn, I had left my current job at a company called Docebo, which was a great organization, and then went to this unicorn that struggled out of the gate. Sort of pandemic, right around the pandemic and the Great Resignation, and after a little while, my VP got let go about a month of me being there. So I kind of stayed around for about 6 months, and then got back out into the market and kind of was deciding what I was going to do. Was I going to, go bug everybody I knew for a gig somewhere? But I had learned about this fractional concept and realized it had been being done at a number of organizations, or a number of roles, I should say. The CFO, fractional CFOs are nothing new.
Yeah.
But it wasn't being done in the partner and alliances space. And and I didn't know if anybody else was doing it at the time. I've come to realize there's more than just me, and it's I think getting more popular. But that's what I ultimately ended up doing, and kind of here I am today,
Yeah.
running that same business
And
3 years into it now.
And Craig, this show is so appropriate because we just did an episode and part one of a 2-part episode on, getting laid off and trying to figure out what to do next, right? And I think Jeff and I were in the same situation you were in. We were out of work, trying to figure out what the best model was or what the best approach, and I kind of copied what Jeff was doing. He went into fractional business, and I thought that's a great idea, and I started to build my own fractional business, and I, eventually got clients, right? So I think what you're talking about today is so, apropos for what we've been kind of broadcasting in our podcast for the past couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just say this before John goes. So if I jumped off a bridge at that point, I swear I think John would have followed me. I'm just saying, right?
Yeah. I mean,
but no, I actually, John, it's kind of interesting, right? Because I had the same thought process that you had, right? And I just come out of a situation where the company got sold and they let everybody, the leadership go, and I had really that same kind of mental thought process. Like, do I jump back into what I call the machine, right? Get back in, start the grind.
Yeah.
And I kind of had that moment of, I don't know, epiphany, clarity, whatever you want to call it. And it's just like, maybe I could do this. And I talk about it on one of our other episodes. And so what I found really interesting, just for our audience, is, I at the time, like you, thought, wow, I'm kind of doing something new, because I could see all the fractional stuff that was going on and people trying to consult, whether it was, fractional CROs, fractional CMOs, there were all these other kind of fractional positions, which I'll just digress. When I explain it to people, they're like, fractional? I go, it's a glorified word of, part-time consult, you're consulting or you're part-time, like whatever you want to call it, but it's okay. But you're invested more at a strategic level when you're working with the organization. So I just found it pretty apropos that when you and I connected, I started looking at your information. I'm like, wow, that's really, really interesting. And I'll also share for the audience that the correlation that I connected with was, you were probably, I'm going to say 18 months ahead of me. Right. So when I was sharing like some of the things that I was doing, you were like, yep, did that. Then this, then you were like, and then this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And
right.
Yeah.
It was, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think, the audience that listens to us may have this thought in their head. They may be at a crossroads, or they may be out of work, or they may be really miserable doing what they're doing, and they want to change up and do something different. So what you can, talk about really will help them. This is like we did a show, a 3-part series on, so you want to be in channel. This one could be, so you want to be a fractional channel leader, right? So, I'd love to learn about your step-by-step process, how everything got started and what you experienced.
One of the things that I would say is really important if you're going down the fractional route is it has to be a role that sort of supports that. Mm-hmm. And what made me realize is that most organizations are very understaffed and under-resourced in their partner organizations to begin with, right? A lot of it tends to be an afterthought for organizations, lightning in a bottle, and they decide they want to get into the partner business or what have you. But it made sense that, organizations would want experienced people, but maybe not the full-time, the full-time, the burden of a full-time employee didn't necessarily make sense. The other thing that was pretty evident in conversations I had with some smaller organizations that's aligned with that is that they wanted to get into the partner business, but just didn't think they were big enough. They didn't have the dollars. They certainly didn't have the resources, and they didn't have the experience. I'll plug partnership leaders a little bit, because it's really been a great community to connect with other people in the partner and alliances, in the partner and alliances game. And if you look, I think there's 2,000 members in partnership leaders, something like that. And what's pavilion?
It's a little over that.
50,000, 100,000.
We interviewed Asher Matthew, and he's
So it's
Sorry,
it's this place where there's lots of people. So.
By the way, John's a big fan, and just for our audience, I'm a lagger, right? So a lot of things I'm usually cutting edge, bleeding edge kind of thing, but on the partnership leader piece, I was kind of a lagger, but and I think that's weirdly enough, like one of the things, like I've known you were connected on LinkedIn, but I saw that connection, that you were part of that, right? So and it has been very interesting, but just come back to for a second, so. Because there's a couple things I wanted to kind of pull out of what you were just talking about. So obviously, and by the way, I made a note here. I'm going to trademark it, John, and copyright it. Craig made the comment about the great resignation. I'm going to call this the great pivot.
Pivot?
Yeah.
What?
Pivot? My favorite.
I don't know if you... Boom, verbal trademark. Nailed it right there. But yeah, it is. To me, it's because I'm seeing it a lot. I'm seeing a lot of people grab jobs. We talked about this on the previous one, Craig. But what I'm trying to, if I could get some insight on really 2 or 3 things here, one is which, God, if I could talk, I would be so successful. But no, seriously, insights around, really the shifts that were taking place, right? So I always tell people, and when we first started working together, right, it was 3 things: people, process, and technology, right? Understand the people that are involved, what's the process, and then you have technology that enables both of those to speed it up, make it better, blah, blah, blah. But when I see these different things, so one is, what are you seeing with the shifts in that process, right? With how companies are looking to engage, because you kind of hit it on the head. Companies want to do these things, but they're either they don't understand it, B, they don't have the resources, or they don't have the expertise to do it, but they kind of know maybe it's something they should do, or one of your last comments was they don't really see how they could do it or if they even need to. So let me come back and reframe it. So one is, talk about the shifts that you're seeing both from a people, process, and technology perspective, and then really how you kind of navigated it, and then wow, that's a word, and then what you're kind of doing going forward now, because you've been engaged in this in a little bit longer than I have, or John, and I just think it'd be really helpful for people out there to get another perspective.
Yeah, well, it was really one of the questions when I do talk to people about this is, how do you get your first customer, which is what you're really trying to get to. And I think that's sort of rooted in this, is that my first engagement was with an organization that I knew. They knew me. We had worked together in the past, and they just felt that they couldn't move into a space where they would be able to afford to work with partners or have the energy or the resources. And when I decided to make this leap, I reached out to them. So I think a good lesson for everybody is use your network if you can. And the opportunity just sort of showed up from there. We talked about what we could do, what would be needed, what I would need to accomplish, the goals that we were talking about, and then started into that work just like I was an employee of the company. And that actually becomes one of the challenges in the first stage is, right, today you'll sit with 1 or 2 customers. What happens if you have 5? Like I think earlier, Jeff, you mentioned another computer that you have. What if you have 5 computers and 5 email addresses and 5 Slack channels? Like can be really insane. And the other big piece of that is the person who's hired you fractionally doesn't know you. They don't know that. They don't remember that. They want you to come to every event, every meeting. They're not
tuned in.
Respective of that relationship that you have, the working relationship that you have. So it becomes an exercise in playing, referee, when it's like, well, I'm only 10 hours a week. What do you want me to do with that 10 hours? I can come to your offsite, but that's it for the week. So that actually started to be a bit of a chain through all the customers I had. I was lucky enough to get kind of 5 customers in relatively short order in the first 3 or 4 months that I was doing this, and it was different hourly rates and all that sort of thing. But it just became such a a pressure cooker that you couldn't maintain it in the way that we were doing it.
Yeah.
I do want to make one note about fractional, though. We've kind of tried to change the term to call it functional, functional consulting. And the idea is that you have us for only what you need us for. You're not paying for our vacation time. You're not paying for being sick. You're not paying for, me to grow as a person. I am there to do a job and have a set of tasks to do it. Right. And particularly in this economic climate, I think that's really interesting to organizations as well. Once they get over the hump of, hey, you're only here so many hours and can figure out how to work with you. They tend to like the approach, but it's not always the easiest getting there. So we had to, when that became a problem, we kind of went back to the drawing board and try and built more of a specific service offerings and productized services. And we're really clear on what we delivered, because part of the challenge became that you weren't word I'm looking for. You weren't able to be all things that they needed.
Right.
So you had to put a box around it. And that was the way we did it, was to build a productized service.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned how these companies you're consulting for kind of treat you like your full-time employee, and they demand your time. And I think Jeff and I both had that experience. And, it's I don't want to say a slap in the face to them when you're like, hey, I'm only here 10 hours a week. And Jeff has this dilemma, all the time. We talk about it. And, how do you, if you're coming into this fractional or functional consulting world, how do you, prepare someone for that? Like, cause I basically tell my client, I'm here. I'm not, 100% every hour dedicated to you. I just want you to understand that. And I try to be tactful about it, but how would you prepare someone for that?
I think that, the best way to do it is to try and have as much of it kind of scheduled as you can. When are you going to meet? What are you going to talk about? If you leave it kind of nebulous, then that's what you're going to get. Your first weekly meeting is going to be completely off topic about something else. So a lot of structure. You need a lot of structure, and specific around the days. Although, one of the things I had attempted to do to manage them better was say, this customer's Tuesday, this customer's Thursday. And that was difficult. That was just as hard, because I'm engaging with their partners, and I can't wait weeks in between to have a conversation if we need to have a conversation about something. So that didn't really work. And what got better was being specific. So here's what we're going to meet about and talk about on this day. And if you can have that planned out for a couple of days, again, this sort of went back to the productized service of really defining what the job is that you're doing, right? So we've kind of broken it down to say, are we doing strategy? That's one element. Are we coaching people? That's another element. Are we working with your hyperscaler? That's another element. So depending on what it is we're going to be delivering for you and the resources required is kind of how we would manage it accordingly in time. Now, the other thing I'll tell you about is I was a fixed hourly rate, right? Whatever, X amount of hours a week and a fixed hourly rate. We've since switched, and we do billing blocks of hours now. So rather than an open-ended amount of hours that float between the week, you have 50 hours. This is what we're going to do in that time frame, and nothing else outside of that. Anything outside of that will require a conversation. And I know they're not the easiest conversations to have with your customer, because, hey, partner people are pretty amenable at best of times, right? So we don't think about that, but it's really, really important that you keep them honest, around it. Because the day you bill more hours than they think they're going to get billed for isn't going to be a great conversation, right? So you got to be careful about that too.
Interesting. So, kind of delving into that. Well, first of all, I mean, there's what you just described to me is the typical consulting paradigm that people run into, right? And where you get in, like there's what you just described. And again, it's nothing new for me,
Yeah.
right? And that was kind of my mindset, because it's like, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do these things, and I've kind of have since kind of shifted to more that block preset. This is what it's going to be. Has kind of helped level some things out. I guess, kind of taking a half step or a side step, looking at what you're doing and how you kind of engage. I mean, what are some of the recommendations that you have around building and maintaining the partnership when you do have this, kind of racehorse mentality, right? Because you've kind of got these blinders on, you're coming in, you're just going to run this race for a period of time. Boom. What would be some of the recommendations that you would make, to help build stronger partnerships, or even to, and again, you tell me, is it the kickstarting piece? Is it the strategy piece? Is it the, the actually ramping up and, getting the cycles going? I mean, where do you see some of the challenges, and what are some of the strategies that you've used to kind of get those things moving?
Yeah, it's a good question. My first customer, so to give you an idea how quickly it sort of went awry, my first customer, I remember sitting with them and we were talking about, I was talking strategy, what kind of partners do we want? What do we want them to deliver for us? That sort of thing. And the CFO had said to me, I said, oh, well, you know what? You have all kinds of experience doing that. So let's just skip over all of that and, just build the plane while we're flying it. And I'm like,
I
oh,
love
okay,
that.
that sounds great. And then we got down there and I'm like, this is a disaster because we didn't take those initial steps. And part of, we'll build a strategy for an organization who wants us to do so, and be very, very mindful about how we do that. But if we're working with a little bit bigger organization who may have a strategy in place, we still reserve the right to review that because it could be wrong. So, I think it's really the product I service allowed us to at least check boxes as we went on a journey. So we developed a scorecard, right? So our first conversation with an organization is, have you worked with partners before? Do you have people who've worked with partners before? What kind of partners?
Yeah.
So we kind of dig in to three different layers, people, product, and operation, and produce a scorecard to say, hey, you don't have any experience in this. If you want to go down that path, you're going to need that. So,
and and sorry to interrupt, what typically do you find, how experienced are these clients with channel before they bring you in? Are they totally raw, new, or do they have an experience that didn't work out because
yeah,
they didn't handle it well? Or what's the type of client you're bringing on? And what are the scores?
yeah. So the way I would separate it is one by company size. So, I find the best organizations for us are the kind of 50 to 250 people.
Okay.
They've got enough resources and enough energy to do this, and they've had some success typically at that point. If you've got to that point, I have worked for bigger, 1,000-person organization that was over 100 million in ARR. They're just very specific about what they want done. That was much more of a mercenary job. Come recruit partners for us, do that, and that's a fine, pretty simple engagement to run with.
Wow.
But when you start to unpack the box and you're working with a company who's, we've never worked with partners, I would say the split is kind of 70-30, in that employee range of 50 to 200, 70 meaning they've never done it before, and 30 who have tried it but were unsuccessful because of lack of experience in doing it. So that's kind of how I would say most of them are. Bigger companies, it's really specific. We want you to build out relationships with the top consulting firms.
Yeah.
Or we want to be hyper focused on our Microsoft relationship. To our conversation a little earlier, John. So you can we'll work with anybody in those guidelines, provided we can make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed around, that you're talking to the right partners, you're looking for the right partners, things like that. If I showed up somewhere and they said, we want, channel partners or resellers, and I say, how's your enablement program? And they say, non-existent. Well, your success, that's probably, you're starting from a pretty low point, there. So I would say that 50 to 200 is kind of a great spot. And like I said, most of them don't have any. And I think that that's just sort of indicative of the amount of people who've actually got partner experience.
Interesting. I was actually, I was out the other day and got introduced to somebody kind of completely blind. Turns out, as we were talking, I could tell she was trying to explain something, and then she said the word channel, and I just started smiling. And I go, I know what the channel is, and she's like, and she just kind of like rolled her eyes. She's like, oh God, thank God. She goes, I hate using that word because nobody knows what the hell it means. And then I got to explain it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah. And here, what was interesting is they, small company, been around since like 1989, 1990, family run business in the technology space, blah, blah, but you made me think about it again, because, what was interesting is, they're in the partner ecosystem, right? And they have partners and they work with agents and resellers and distributors. So, and I remember like that whole evolution. And one of the things, as we were talking, the conversation got to the challenge of how things have evolved and the pivot. And I'm using the word pivot. She didn't say pivot, but that whole, how things are evolving in the shift, I'll call it. And the challenge was, that the partnership ecosystem has changed. The way that things are resold has changed. And then I'm going to come back to the people thing, having people that were used to doing things a certain way, and now you've got to change. Like, John and I talk about AI, which we can talk about how that's impacting it. We may have to do a whole nother show on it, but it's just evolving thing. I believe AI is an enabling technology, and it's so pervasive right now through so many different things. It's kind of quite amazing. But I kind of wanted to come back because, when you talk about that specific size, I think you can kind of, what you just described, you can kind of tweak that to fit more or less, a pretty wider swag of organizations, right? Where you can lean in. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. There's always been resources for other organizations, like third parties. There was always a third party delivering some kind of sales training or, some sort of customer experience model that they were, and the channels and alliances business has been really underserved. In that, even just as simple, and we're finding more requests for things like my business partners. An AWS journeyman, I guess, if you want to use that term, and we're finding that so many organizations, it's just a big black hole in how to engage. So it's just like, hey, can you coach our sales reps on how to engage with AWS? So we're seeing smaller engagements like that, where it's more, imparting some best practices and things like that. I do want to make one thing about the fractional piece that's really important to understand, and one of the biggest differentiators, which is why I think we had some early success, is that we were doing the work, right? There's a long history, and in fact, we our first customer after our kind of productization, we were up against one of those typical, I'm going to sit here and do PowerPoints and give them to you, and you're going to pay me a lot of money for that. And what our customers saw value in is that we got in and got our hands dirty, right? We're talking to customers, we're engaged with sales reps, we're talking to partners, we're having those conversations. You've got to be a part of the team. I find it less likely that they'll hire you for long-term engagements. You can probably churn, $1,000 a day sessions on how to help salespeople engage with partners better, easy enough. But if you want something a little bit more, you've got to be able to get in there and do the work.
So let me ask you this. No, sorry, Craig. I mean, let me ask you this, because we had talked last week, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago, about playbooks. Do you think playbooks fit in there? And kind of to expand upon that, what's an ideal playbook look like for one of your clients?
Yeah. So and the term playbook can mean a lot of things. So for us, it's really the guide on how to run your partner business. So we'll include things like, and this was part of our development of our productized service, which is really just unpacking everything I did when I started a new job, right? It was really just unpacking that and expanding on that. But our playbook, the way we look at it, is everything from, you know, your core strategy, what types of partners, where you are in the maturity model of that, what your rules of engagement should look like, your ICP, who's your ideal, your IPP for is what I should have said, your ideal partner profile, your value to partners, your value you bring to your partners. You know, it always amazed me when organizations, you'd sit down and say, you should partner with us, and they would say, why? And you would say, my customers love our software because of this. It's like, okay, that's great, but what does it do for my business? You know, so understanding the value that your organization who's looking for partners brings to the partner community is really, really important. So we include that, right. Management cadences, you know, your evolutionary path, what your partner onboarding looks like, a funnel process for partners, which people, you know, nobody knows at any given time how many partners they're recruiting and where they are in that process, which is going to be a key driver to understanding when the revenue is going to show up, which is always a constant question from leadership on it. But it's all those things. Our goal when we leave an engagement, so if it doesn't matter how what we've been engaged for, it could just be the playbook piece of it to give you that playbook. But it's a guide that long after we're gone will live on and still be there to provide the value and just build on top of it. So we want to give, you know, we talk about the types of roles you need, the types of people you need in those roles, you know, what organization you should report up to. Even the operational piece will help figure out how your Salesforce or your CRM needs to work. Things like that, what's missing. So it's really that whole encompass. We kind of refer to it as your partner operating system. So while it's a playbook, we refer to it as building your partner operating system.
That's a great term for that. I really like that. Yeah, and as I build playbooks for my clients, you know, I try to focus in on matching up the ICP with the IPP, you know, the perfect partner. You know, and I think the wrong partners are, you know, maybe a vendor you buy from who could resell you, but they don't do anything for you. You know, that's not a good partner. You know, I firmly believe, you know, the partners you want to work with are hungry. They understand your business. They want to latch on and ride the wave with you, you know, especially if you're an emerging technology. And I try to focus in with my clients on a very set number of partners, maybe 5 focused partners that you could spend your time and energy and money with and get results with a lot faster than going after the big boys like the CDWs and the SHIs and the big ones, you know, that really you have to climb your way through the ecosystem at SHI, you know, and CDW, and you have to pay to play there. And I don't like that. I don't like having to pay to get their attention. You know, our product should be good enough for you to pay attention and make money on.
Yeah, that's a marketing relationship essentially when you're paying CDW. Pretty
much.
You know, paying for the right to train their people on your product. So at the right moment when somebody calls to order something, they might say what it is. I'm not saying there isn't value in that, but it's a particular type of business. And most of our organizations we work with, there's a little more complexity to their software. And I know SHI and SoftChoice and all those guys have done, at least made efforts to be more knowledgeable around services and how to implement things. But, you know, traditionally for us, it's really about kind of nailing that IPP. But before that, you know, what is it you want to accomplish? You know, we always try and bring the customer back because CEOs are really quick to go. OEMs, resellers, it's like, okay, hold on. What do you want out of them? You know, and if I'll give you a real example. I had an organization I was talking to, and they said the CEO wants OEM partners. And if you're familiar with OEM partners, it's a great business and can be a long business that can really pay off, but it's a heavy uplift. So when he said OEMs, I said, well, why? And the answer was, well, revenue. And I'm like, well, that's not this year, man. So when do you expect the revenues to show up? So it's like we try and get back to a business problem, right? Is it top of funnel problem? Is it a revenue problem? And how will you accomplish that revenue? That uptick in revenue. You either got to go after a new market, new geography, and you can do that fast or slow. You can hire, if you want to, let's say you want to get into government, you could go hire a bunch of people in government and open up the offices and learn the regulations that go along with everything. Or you can find a really great partner and be there in, 3 to 6 months, rather than a year to build a business and find the people to do it. So, if your goal is revenue, what kind of revenue? Where's it going to come from? If it's more of the same, well, that maybe begs for a top of funnel problem. If your revenue problem is with a known customer base, then you should probably think about going after a new market if you're not having success there. And if you're not having success there, why? So, we try and take it back to that level with customers.
I was going to say, I think when you're bringing on a partner, the fastest way to get their attention and to get, things moving is to either give them an opportunity to work on with you, or in some cases, maybe hire them if they have services to evaluate your platform, or maybe buy equipment from them that you need to, make your operation work, right? And that gets their attention. And it's, this law of, reciprocal business. They want to do business with you at that point, right?
Right.
And you're kind of talking about fast ways and latching on and top of funnel, which is all, what fractional, the dilemma of being a fractional, channel leader is you got to do all that and bring it in and show results, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff, you look like you were going to have a comment. You had a comment there. You're muted. Oh.
Damn it. Yeah, I keep coughing, so I muted myself. I don't know, it's allergies, but no, what you were saying, I was going to say the same thing, which is, to me, it's all about execution and expectations, right?
Yeah.
So what you just described is people think, channel, partner, I'm going to add water and I'm going to have money in 60, 90 days. And I'm like, okay, this isn't a cheat.
The seed is germinating.
This is not a chia pet, right? You don't just seeds on it and you got a plan in like 30 days. But no, to me, that's always been a real challenge, is the expectations of what you're going to get. And then you have to go execute. And when they're not seeing it, and again, that's a whole nother conversation around PE and VCs and their expectations to drive revenue. But no, and it's so when I was coming back, it's funny because I'm sitting here taking notes and coughing at the same time. I want to be cognizant of the time here, so I definitely want to try to get you back. But if you could just give me kind of your top 3 things, right? So what are the top 3 common pitfalls that you see when you're working with somebody trying to grow a channel? And then how do you manage the conflicts? Because to me, the pitfalls or the challenges are a big problem. And then it's the conflicts that you start to run into to drive a healthy partner relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you mean when you say conflicts, are you talking more internally, Jeff, or do you mean?
It was an open-ended, when you're working with somebody, where are you seeing are the conflicts internal between the direct and the channel piece? Are the conflicts between, because there can be conflicts between the partner ecosystem because they didn't properly articulate their go-to-market. And they basically, right, they went like this, they went wide like a shotgun, and they've got different types of partners that are now conflicting with the time and the resources that they need to execute.
Yeah. So I would say, building a pipeline of the right partners. And I know that sounds like an easy answer, but it's not. So that's really critical, that your ideal partner profile not be so broad that it can mean dozens and dozens or hundreds of organizations. Be really specific around that. you can, John, to your point, 5 performing partners is better than, 20 who are barely getting by, right? There's
Right.
It's less expensive to manage 5 partners, and everybody will be successful, and you can have a much better conversation. So I think partner selection is key. Make sure that your partner goals and your corporate goals are aligned, right? One of the big mistakes I often see is, there'll be a missed expectation on what gets delivered. So be really clear on that piece of it. The other is be well aware of your KPIs that you're tracking and measuring. And most partner businesses don't do a very good job of that. It's like I was at a partnership leaders event recently, and somebody had said that the CRO was talking about revenue and talking about referral partners. And I said, referral partners don't deliver revenue. They deliver top of funnel. Like, you're measuring the wrong thing.
Yep.
That there's still an accountability to direct sales for that business that comes from referral partners if you own the sale. So the KPIs are really important. And the other thing is, don't forget where partners can also impact your business. So a lot of times we think about the partners delivering sales and leads, but you know what? You got churn problem. You might have an implementation problem, and a great implementation partner might help solve that for you if churn's your biggest problem. Right? Maybe technical support isn't working, and you need a partner who can deliver technical support across all the time zones.
Yeah.
Right. So partners can play roles besides a sales partner. Maybe you need a third-party technology to help improve your product or make it stand out. So you can think about partners from that perspective too, rather than just.
Yeah. I try to get resale partners that have a taste of services to latch on as a pro services partner for me.
Yeah.
So I'm accelerating opportunity, and work great at a couple companies. They'd get our $35,000 license deal with a margin, and they get their 100% services deal.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great approach. And also, I think with the reduced number of partners, you have a better handle on your opportunities, right? 100%. And in my opinion, those partners should be the ones that are not, necessarily shoving leads in our face, but they have the relationships, they have the paper, they have the ability for us to transact quickly.
Yeah.
Right. And they are able to help me close a deal, which then reciprocates to opportunities they bring to us, because they see how easy it is to work with us. Right. So I really like what you're saying there about, that type of partner. But go ahead, Jeff, you something?
No. I'm nodding. I'm actually I'm totally agreeing with what you're saying. I mean, it's look, there's some really incredible nuggets here. I mean, I can't wait to kind of go through the transcript afterwards. Because I want to be cognizant, because we're kind of hitting the top here. Definitely want to try to get you back, but I'm laughing because you've said a couple of things, and John will tell you, and Craig, you'll probably start to remember now the more we talk. I'm a little demented, right? And I always see things things are a little askew. I always see them from askew. But you mentioned fractional, right? Because I want to come back and tie this all off a little bit. But we talk about fractional, but it's really functional, right?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned something that started spinning in my head, and you mentioned mercenary. Like, you go in, you're kind of like a mercenary.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to do this in my Liam Neeson voice, but it's, when you're going to be a fractional or functional channel sales or alliance leader, you basically have to tell people, look, what I do are a very particular set of skills that I've refined over a long and rewarding career, designed to drive growth, build alliances, and deliver results.
Holy mackerel! Liam Neeson was on our show today.
I'm just I'm sitting there like, oh my God. Like, I don't know. Like I always, everything I grew up, I was a movie kid, right? So it's like, I see things and I'm like, my kids finally learned, like, all my jokes growing up. They're like, Dad, that's from a movie. Like, they finally realize now that they're in their 20s.
You've been ripping Hollywood off.
Jeff, We should make a T-shirt for Catalyst that has that saying, like for Fractional. We'll do like some sort of T-shirt with that saying on it, like the Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna paraphrase it,
it.
right? We'll paraphrase it. Maybe we'll get him to be a guest. I don't know, but
Maybe.
But yeah. So anyway, I just thought it was
I
interesting.
thought he was just on the show. He just like you sounded just like him. So look, we're at the top of the hour here, top of the show. We want to tie things off, and Craig, first of all, really great insight on being a fractional channel leader. I think the three of us definitely have different approaches, but I think we all have the same idea of how it works. You've been doing it a little longer than us, and I think you have the scars to to talk about. But I just want to say thank you for being on the show. I think we do need to have you back to talk a little bit deeper. Like I'd love to talk deeper about playbooks in general, because I think that's a really important part of what we do and how we build our program, right? But if you want, give a couple, give a minute, pitch what you're doing, who you are.
I appreciate that. Thanks for
Craig Gleason.
Yeah, thanks for having me. By the way, I enjoyed the conversation, and definitely would come back anytime about any subject. But yeah, there's a team of people. We're called Partner IQ, and we're helping organizations and that kind of 50-person and up. We kind of say late Series A if you're in that position. And just before that, the reality of you being able to support a channel is complicated. There's a lot of things you're figuring out on your own, but certainly in that Series A, especially in today's economic climate, getting COGS and CAC out of your business is really, really important, and partners can really help you. Your ecosystem can really drive that for you. So we're helping organizations make their first leap into partners, correcting some of their misguided ways in the beginning, and adding that 25 years of experience that we have. We're also adding a lot of specifics around hyperscalers. So we just are launching a service around a cloud deal desk, where it's a service for hire, and we'll manage your marketplace environment. We'll do your private offers. We'll make sure that you're meeting all the criteria to remain at marketplace, engage the AWS folks on your behalf, and things like that. So you talk about thin partner experience. There's very thin in working with an AWS, and in all honesty, they don't do the best job, but they're big and they got a lot to deal with, and they're just not waiting around to give you leads. So there's a lot to unpack specifically in cloud. And again, our role can be from a coach enabler role to all the way from, we're ditch diggers, we call ourselves. We get in and get dirty, and I love nothing better than talking to partners and finding out what's going on in the market and so on. So and we custom design that based on where you are in the maturity model and how we can help you accomplish the goals. Awesome. But it starts with corporate goals. We always start there. What are you trying to do as a company? Let's figure out how partners help you do that, so we're not making it up 6 months in. So yeah. That's in a nutshell.
Right. John, just I was going to say, just to end it. So if you haven't heard him say the word "about" a couple times, you probably have figured out. So first of all, Craig is he's from the north part. The Great White North, as I like to call it, So great opportunity to have you on. Really enjoyed it. Would love to have you back. Want to kind of dig into, like John said, around the playbook stuff and a little bit more of the details and minutia. So
for sure.
And you know what? We love you, Canada. We're not all behind those tariffs, but we love you, Canada. So listen, just thank you, Craig Gleason. Partner IQ is the name of your company, and I think you're doing a lot of great things. We're going to definitely have you on again. But to close out the show, you could find the Channel Surfers on all of the podcast platforms that are out there. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn page. And we also have a website, www.channelsurfers.com. And please reach out to us if you have feedback. We'd love to hear it. And until the next show, thank you so much, Craig and Jeff. And have a great week, guys.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.